refinancing isn't always the best choice. It seems like a win-win, but at the same time, you've got to make sure that you know the pros and cons. Be sure to check out this video so that you can know the pros and cons and make an informed decision on whether or not you should be refinancing your student loans. Hi, I'm Claire. Welcome back to my channel. This is where I talk about money every week, so if you're new here, thanks for stopping by. Be sure to hit the like button, be sure to hit subscribe if you're into learning about how to money. Today we are going to be talking about something that was recently requested, and we're going to talk about whether or not you should refinance your student loans. Student loans have been a very hot topic lately, especially with the continued forbearance going on, and the question a lot of the times is, well, should I go ahead and refinance my student loans, or should I just keep riding out the 0% forbearance for as long as possible? It may seem like a no-brainer, but we're going to talk about the pros and cons of refinancing today so that you can get a better idea of whether or not you should actually refinance or not. We'll get right into it, but before we do, be sure to hit like, be sure to hit subscribe. It helps me out a lot. As a small channel, it really helps me grow, so I really appreciate you taking that time to do it. So let's get to it. Now, first we're going to talk about the pros. So the very first pro of refinancing your student loans is that you may be able to get a lower interest rate on your loans. So if you have student loans that are sitting at a 5% or more interest rate, you may be able to, depending on your credit score, depending on how long you've had the loans, depending on how much money you make, you may be able to decrease the amount of interest that you're paying on your student loans by refinancing. When I first started my financial independence journey, my student loans were at like 8%, something crazy like that. So every month I was making payments on it, but it felt like I was never really making a difference because I just kept paying on the interest. Now I've refinanced my student loans twice since I started this journey 3 years ago, and my student loans are now at 3.54%. So they've actually really lowered the priority for me in terms of what I should be paying off. I no longer worry about paying off my student loans early because I have student loans at 3.5% interest rate. To me, that's like free money, so I don't feel like there's any rush to pay it off because I'll make more money by investing the difference in the stock market instead. Another pro that a lot of people don't think about when refinancing their student loans is that when you refinance, you can actually get a cosigner off of your loans. So for example, my dad was a cosigner for all 5 of his children's student loans. And so he actually, even though he makes over $150,000 a year, he wasn't able to get a new credit card with a decent limit because he was a cosigner for all of our loans. And our loans at one point almost totaled to about $500,000. So I was the first to refinance, and by refinancing, I was able to get my dad off of my student loans, which freed up credit for him. And then my brother refinanced, my sister refinanced, and slowly but surely we're giving back his freedom to not have to be a cosigner on so many people's loans. It may not seem like a big deal, but the co-signing on those loans can be a pretty big deal because your parents, if they co-signed for you, they're on the hook for your student loans. So if something were to happen and you weren't able to pay back those loans, then that burden goes to your parents. So personally, as a child, as a daughter, I don't want to do that to my parents. I don't want them to be responsible for my student loans. So as soon as I was able to get them off my student loans, I took them off. And so it's definitely one of those nice bonus points. And plus, we want to make sure that our parents are financially stable as well, and co-signing on 5 different loans is certainly not a financially savvy thing to do. Another pro of refinancing your student loans or consolidating your student loans is that you can take a bunch of your different loans and turn them into one payment every month. So instead of having to worry when Navient's coming out and when your SoFi payment's coming out and et cetera, you can put it all into one. So that really simplifies things, and that way you always know, okay, my student loans come out on this date and I don't have to worry about it any other time. Now, we have to talk about some of the cons too, because while there are definitely benefits to refinancing your student loans, there's definitely cons too. So the very first one is that if you have federal student loans, you actually have some federal protections in place to protect you. So for example, we've been in student loan forbearance since March 2020. That only applies to people who have federal student loans. So if you have private student loans like I do because I've refinanced so many times, you do not qualify for forbearance. You also do not qualify for forgiveness. So those protections that are in place, you really don't get those benefits when you have private student loans. So I already had private student loans, so I wasn't really getting any of the benefits anyway, so it made sense for me to go ahead and refinance since my student loans were private anyway. But there are a lot of benefits of having federal student loans. Federal student loans in times of need, in times like what we've seen over the last year and a half, if you have federal student loans, you haven't had to pay any interest on your loans for the last year and a half, and you also haven't had to pay your student loans for the last year and a half. That's really nice because if we're going through an economic downturn, the government's going to put these stops in place so that you don't have to keep paying your student loans when we're going through depression or recession. However, if you have those private loans, you have to keep chucking along and paying. You also don't qualify for student loan forgiveness if you have private student loans. So that includes the teacher student loan forgiveness programs, it includes the public service loan forgiveness, it includes the income-based repayment forgiveness. If you're on an income-based repayment plan, after 20 or 25 years, your student loans get forgiven anyway. But if you have private student loans and you work in the public sector, you would not benefit from getting those student loans forgiven. So if you qualify for student loan forgiveness, whether it's through the public service loan forgiveness program or through some other program, you don't want to refinance your student loans because you're not going to get those benefits if you do. Another con to refinancing your student loans is that you do need to have a decent credit score in order to get a decent rate. So a lot of the times, in order for you to have a good interest rate on your student loans, you need to have a credit score in the 700s. The higher your credit score, the better interest rate you're going to get. So if you don't have a good credit score, refinancing probably isn't going to be a good option for you. In fact, if you are refinancing your student loans, you will actually have a ding to your credit temporarily. So when they run your credit and they approve you for the loan and you accept the loan, there will be a ding to your credit because it's a new inquiry. However, usually those dings to your credit are pretty temporary, but it's still something to think about. If you're planning on buying a house or opening a new credit card within the year, you might not want to do a student loan refinance because you'll have a lower credit score immediately after you refinance those student loans. So those are some of the major pros and cons of whether or not you should refinance your student loans. Now, let's say that you've watched this and you've now decided that you do want to refinance your student loans. You're probably wondering, well, what company should I work with in order to refinance my student loans? What's something that's credible? What's something that I know I can trust? One of my favorite companies is called Juno. Juno is a company that was started by students for students, and they really focus on using the power of group buying to negotiate lower interest rates from lenders. So it's kind of cool. They basically gather up all of these different borrowers, and then they use the power of having, hundreds of borrowers going to the bank and saying, you can have all of these borrowers, but you have to give us the lowest interest rate possible. So they're able to guarantee the lowest interest rates. And in fact, if you find a lower interest rate, they will match that interest rate for you. What's also really cool about Juno is the fact that they're a totally free service. So when you sign up for them and you sign up to get into the negotiation stage or whatever negotiations they're going into, you don't have to pay for anything. And in fact, your credit score isn't run even until you accept the loan offer. And the nice thing too is they'll come up with an offer for you and you aren't obligated to take that if you don't want to. Juno does a lot of different types of loans too. So they do undergraduate loans, they do graduate loans, they do medical loans, they do parent loans, they do refinance loans, but they guarantee the lowest private interest rates out there. So if you're interested in using them, I do have a link to Juno down below in my bio. It is an affiliate link. If you do end up signing up with them, I do get a kickback from Juno just to say, hey, thanks for promoting our product. But if you know me, I will never promote something to you that I don't believe in myself. Did I use Juno myself when I refinanced my student loans? No, I ended up using another company because I hadn't heard of Juno. But if I were to refinance my student loans now, I would absolutely use Juno because lowest interest rate guaranteed. No other company that I'm aware of does that. So that's pretty nice. And also, I just really like working with them. They've been really great to work with on the affiliate front as well. So I'll leave links to all of that down below, but that's pretty much all I have for you today. So remember, take into consideration the pros and cons. If you have federal student loans, it might not be the best choice for you to go ahead and get those private student loans. If you're on the path to student loan forgiveness, again, it's probably not something that you want to refinance, but if you know you're not going to have your student loans forgiven, you know you're going to be paying them off, well, you might as well be paying them off at the lowest price possible, right? So that's it. Go ahead and check them out and let me know what questions you have down in the comments below. And if you've made it this far, be sure to hit the like button, be sure to hit subscribe. It helps me out a ton and I really appreciate it. And if you're not already following me on TikTok and Instagram, be sure to follow me there I post on TikTok like upwards of 5 times a day, and I post on Instagram twice a day. It's all money content. It's all geared towards helping you learn how to money as best as possible. So thanks again, and if you have any questions or requests for videos, let me know down in the comments. Thanks, bye.